Hello and welcome to this new tutorial. A few weeks ago, Philip Hoffman published a video with a comparison of different tools for route planning on YouTube.
Und dann kommen wir jetzt zu dem Track of the Day von Ansgar.
There, the route planners Calimoto, Curvature, MRA, RouteView, BaseCamp, and Track of the Day are compared. In the video, Philip says that he is not familiar with Track of the Day and cannot answer many questions about poise and routing.
Von dem, wie man sich daran bewegt, muss ich sogar sagen, das mag jetzt daran liegen, dass ich mich mit BaseCamp mehr beschäftigt habe, aber komme ich sogar deutlich schlechter zurecht. Und das Routing ist wie bei MAA etwas schlechter als bei BaseCamp. Gerne jemand, der da ein bisschen tiefer eingestiegen ist, kann das vielleicht nochmal falsifizieren und mir sagen, ob ich da was falsch gesehen habe, aber...
I then gave him a pro license for 1 year and offered to explain all open points in a Teams meeting. Unfortunately, such a meeting has not yet taken place. My last video was therefore very detailed about poise. Today, everything will revolve around the topic of routing. This should also answer all open questions from Philip's video. Okay, here we go. Enjoy! Let's start with an important feature that Philip had disabled in his video, auto-routing. If auto-routing is activated, missing segments of a route are automatically recalculated. So if a waypoint is added, moved, or deleted, the vertices of the missing route sections are sent to the Microsoft routing services and their result is processed and displayed a few milliseconds later. We can see how this works in this short example. Above the list of routes, a symbol of a light bulb is displayed. If it is green, auto-routing is active. If it is red, it is deactivated. In Philip's video you can see that he had deactivated the auto-routing, perhaps accidentally. However, both settings are useful. If the internet connection in a remote hotel is very slow when traveling, it can be advantageous to deactivate automatic routing. You can then insert, move or delete all route points completely freely without having to wait for the results of the routing services. In the default setting, however, auto-routing is always active. If you know, you can recognize it immediately by the color of the small light bulb. If you switch from deactivated to activated, missing sections of a selected route are automatically recalculated. Here you can see how it works. Track of the Day uses Microsoft routing services. These are available in 2 variants and allow all kinds of parameters to control routing. Let's take a closer look at this routing. The standard routing can distinguish between running and driving. In addition, there is transit for the use of public transport, but this is currently not used in Track of the Day. Standard routing knows avoidances such as highways, ferries, etc. A total of 18 different combinations are possible here. All routes can be optimized according to distance and time. It is also possible to take into account closures and the current traffic situation. In total, 144 different combinations of routing parameters are possible, which potentially deliver different results. Let's move on to advanced routing. This service can take into account the dimensions of vehicles, which is why it is also suitable for motorhomes, buses, and trucks. Here there is only the mode driving but a total of 288 possible combinations in the avoidances. This service can only optimize according to time and traffic. This results in 576 variants for parameterization, each of which can deliver different results. All parameters can be found in the routing profiles of Track of the Day. Factory settings summarize some of the most common combinations, but you can change them at will. For this video I have prepared some routes. All start in Munich and lead to the Hotel Rebstock in Lucerne. I lived there for 2 years and know the area really well. In the info pages you will find the route planners from KAKIMOTO, Curvature and MRA, among others. For this video, I calculated routes from Munich to Lucerne with all 3 route planners and exported the results as a track. Thanks to the integration of these route planners, all exported tracks are automatically opened in Track of the Day. We can see how this works here. Now let's take a closer look at routing with KAKIMOTO. Once you have entered the start and destination, 4 fixed routing algorithms are available. There are the profiles fast without motorway, curvy and super curvy. In my many tests, however, curvy and super curvy often delivered identical results. The tracks of the finished routes can be seen here. Let's move on to curvature. If you don't pay anything there, only one routing profile is available. We can see the result here. MRA automatically calculates multiple variants if possible. We see the results here as well. If you select all tracks at the same time, you can see very nicely that all planners deliver largely independent results. KAKIMOTO has calculated 4 routes with 19, 152, 268 and 297 turns. Curvature's proposal brings it to 263 corners. MRA suggests routes with 294, 315 and 492 turns. If you compare the fast KAKIMOTO route with the longest MRA route, a slim 370 kilometers are compared to a whopping 755 kilometers. 2 completely different results that can hardly be compared with each other. If you like to take long detours, MRA may be quite a good choice. Now let's take a look at what routing options are available for Track of the Day. I had the test route calculated with the various predefined routing profiles. Let's start with the result of the fast routing profile. Here we find only 26 curves that stretch over 367 kilometers. The reason is quite simple: the use of the motorway was allowed here. Let's look at the second result. The curvy profile has calculated 220 curves spread over 365 kilometers. The super curvig profile delivers 214 corners at 354 kilometers. Extended routing delivers 25 curves over 426 kilometers when using the highway. If you ban the motorway, you have to set an intermediate goal. This means that this route has 301 curves over 388 kilometers. If you create a routing overlay from all tracks and the routes that Track of the Day has calculated, you can see that all route suggestions are very different. There is no good and no evil here. Each route has individual strengths and weaknesses. With a heterogeneous group of motorcyclists of different ages and different motorcycles, everyone will find their individual favorite. Unfortunately, there is no patent recipe for a super route that simply outshines everything else and that everyone likes. If you want a route that suits your own wishes, you have to create it yourself, or choose what you like from the variants offered. This is where Track of the Day plays to its strengths. If you look at the routes in detail via Google Street View and compare the altitude profiles via the inspector, you quickly get a feeling for what you will like and what you won't like. If you don't feel like it, or if it's all too complicated for you, you have to live with the fact that you'll just drive along somewhere and almost everything is left to chance. Of course, you can do that, but I myself prefer to be self-determined. The visualization of planned routes with the integration of map channels is exciting. We can see how this works here. You could still go here and have our test route calculated with the good old BaseCamp. You can see how this works here. To do this, I duplicate one of the routes and delete the calculated waypoints. I now export this route to BaseCamp and calculate it there with the routing profiles for car and motorcycle. Again, the results are very different. Because BaseCamp is now ancient, you have no way to view routes in detail with Google Street View, a 3D viewer, or aerial maps. For me, a no-go and the reason not to use BaseCamp anymore. If you plan with BaseCamp, you have to do a lot of research and gradually adjust all routes so that they meet your personal preferences. You constantly have to jump back and forth between several tools, which is annoying and time-consuming. BaseCamp therefore no longer really fits into the year 2024. All you see in BaseCamp is where you might be able to drive along. You can't see whether passes are open or roads are closed. Ultimately, you have to ask yourself what an elaborately planned route is worth if it doesn't work in real life. Let's take a closer look at one of our routes in the route editor. You can see the waypoints start and finish. The route has only one segment, which is displayed in a list at the starting point. One might now ask why this list has only one entry? I now switch to my routing profile individual and recalculate the route. In this routing profile, the standard routing is used. The routing mode is drive. All avoidances are disabled. In the preferences, manage sections individually is set. In the optimizations, we find time, avoid blocks. In the route editor, the first waypoint displays 1/4. If you open the list now, you can see 4 route variants between 367 and 480 kilometers. I now duplicate this route 3 times and set the respective variant. Then I create a routing overlay from each route. Now we see the variants on the map at the same time. If you look at everything in detail, there are also sections that lead over federal roads. Many bikers will like it, others will hate it. The world is heterogeneous. Calimoto, Curvature and MRA have many fans, not least because the advertising promises that everything is very easy to use and that you never drive straight ahead again. Everyone knows that. If you know how it works, Track of the Day is also easy to use. There is also the KAKIMOTO Super Curve Assistant, which can be activated via the context menu. Here you can see how it works. Once a route has been selected, KAKIMOTO can always create new variants. All it takes is a single click. In the options, you can set how much existing routes should be varied and which point types KAKIMOTO should take into account. KAKIMOTO also uses the points of routing overlays and thus always finds interesting new variants of existing routes. KAKIMOTO is unique in the world. No other route planner has a similar function. Here we can see how KAKIMOTO can create new variants from a route over and over again. In the route info line, we can see the number of curves, the distance, and an estimate of the travel time. As cool as KAKIMOTO and many automatisms are, I personally prefer to explore and plan on my own. If my schedule allows, I like small streets with little traffic. In order to create routes the way I like them, I often look around along calculated variants and search specifically for scenic side roads with Google Street View and the maps of Michelin or Top Plus. Then I use the rubber band function to adjust everything to the way I like it. Here you can see how it works. I can see whether a pass road is open in the warnings or the map with the current traffic situation. It is terrific that this application supports multiple displays. This is another unique selling point that sets track of the day apart from all route planners that only run in a browser window. Planning routes individually is a little more complex, but at the end of the day, everything has a personal touch and does not come from an algorithm. In addition, dealing with the destination is always a great anticipation for me. If all routes work well later, all the better. Finally, I would like to come back to the variants. If there are no restrictions in a routing profile, the routing services used can provide up to 4 variants. For example, if a route consists of start, stop and 3 route points, it has 4 segments and thus a maximum of 16 variants are possible. To select the variants, open the route in the route editor. Here you can immediately see for which section there are variants. If you create routing overlays, all differences can be seen at a glance. In the routing profile you can set a preference. Each preference is one of the 4 possible variants. It must be noted that variants are only charged if there are no restrictions such as avoid motorway. The list of preferences always has 5 elements. The top element is called Manage Sections Individually. If this entry is selected in the routing profile, up to 4 variants are delivered for each calculation of a section of a route. In the route editor, you can then choose what you like. If one of the variants is to be selected automatically, set prefer shorter time, prefer faster routes, prefer balanced routing, or prefer winding routes. Each time a section of a route is calculated, the number of curves, the distance, and the expected driving time are determined. By combining these results, one of the variants is then automatically selected. If a section between two route points is short and there are no alternatives, usually only one result is possible, and then this single result is always used. This explains why there are sometimes no differences between fast, curvy, and super curvy. Finally, I would like to come back to Philip's video. He compared route planners there solely on the basis of automatically generated routes. In my opinion, however, this is the wrong approach, because there can be no good and no bad when it comes to routes, because in the end everything is always a question of personal preference. Statements like, "The routing is slightly worse than with BaseCamp, as with MRA," are therefore unfortunately nonsense. If you were to say, "For me, Calimoto is perfect because I don't want a plan and I like the results generated," it would be a correct statement. Nevertheless, it would also be useless for a ranking of route planners. If you want to compare route planners objectively, you have to take into account aspects such as usability, available map material, calculation times, flexibility in post-processing, export options, and much more. But even then, there can be no real overall winner, because all route planners work well in their own way and meet the demands of the users they love. Track of the Day integrates 4 of the route planners presented by Philip. It's not a question of which of them is the best, but which one you prefer to use. If you liked this video, I would be happy about a thumbs up and a subscription. If you click on the little bell, you will be notified in the future when there are new tutorials for Track of the Day. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon.